had been made to glow in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. What did he say here? And in his right hand he held seven stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp two-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in its strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet like a dead man. And he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. Why, John? Why? Why should John not be afraid? I am the first and the last. I have started it, and I have completed. Keep your eye on the author and the finisher of your faith. I have already done it. I had this revelation hit me today that height, breadth, width, length, depth, the extent of all that we understand is distance and space. When you step out of time, it has no bearing on you. For an angel, space is not a problem because he's not in time. He's moving, but he's not restricted by time and distance. It's only for us. They speak to us according to time and distance constraint. And so John is writing, understanding, he's writing to men who have time and distance constraint, who have limited understanding of what goes on in the heavenly realm. So in Revelation 4, notice what happens. He was in the Spirit to get this first chapter and the next two. But in 4:1, what happens? After these things I looked, and behold, a door was standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking to me, said, come up here. So John had to even go from this elevated spiritual state and go up yet higher in a door. And this door, I believe, was outside of time. And he revealed future events, not past events. Connecting to past events, using prophecies of the old prophets. Woven into this whole book of Revelation are the words of Daniel and Zechariah and Amos. All these words are Isaiah, and the illustration and the imagery and the symbolism all ties to Ezekiel and different things that were mentioned by the former prophets. And he said, come up here and I will show you what must take place after these things. Now, the people who believe in the rapture believe that these things are related to the church age, the church time, the time of churches. Because once we go into 4 and we move on through the book of Revelation, we're talking about prophets and apostles, saints, and individuals. No more letters to churches. Jesus is not talking to churches anymore. He's talking to individuals like you and me. I believe this church time is soon up. Now, where everybody's struggling right now, including me, is will we go through persecution individually? Will we just be raptured out of it? I don't think we're going to be raptured out of it. The only people who are going to be raptured out are the ones the Lord deems, the ones who have that love for Jesus. As I've said before, if you've listened to anything I've said about end times, is if you are not dedicated to Jesus Christ, you are going to miss the rapture. It's only for those who are worthy of the rapture. It's something you have to become worthy of. Well, how do you get worthy of it? Well, you got to be eagerly anticipating it. You have to be doing righteous acts of the saints. You have to be praying. You have to be worshiping. You have to be crying out. That's what's going to get you in a rapture to miss a lot of what happens in the rest of the book of Revelation. So understand that John is now seeing something that is directed to individuals. Last word to Laodicea was, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if anyone hears, my Father and I will come and will sup and will be present with you. Because in the last church, you have lukewarmness. If there is not lukewarmness in America, I don't know what is in America. We are pure lukewarmness. We have a form of godliness, and we deny its power. If that's not the case, then you tell me otherwise, and I will tell you, you are not reading this Bible, and you're not praying, and you're not seeking God in the Spirit. You're just forming some defense that's just shallow as can be. The words I'm saying have been prayed over. I'm going through the fire. I'm in the fire with Jesus, and I'm coming out of the fire preaching. What a beautiful thing. You do that. Go in the fire with Jesus and come out, and you won't see us as a hot or cold. You'll see us as lukewarm, and you'll be frustrated. Just like all people that go through the fire with Jesus, they get frustrated. They get hurt. They get frustrated because when they look around, they can't find company, can't find fellowship. Nobody seems to understand what they're going through. That's what it's like to go in the fire. There's individuals, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they went in there individually. There was no support for them. They were vulnerable. They were just citizens in Babylon. And the fire was stoked 7 times hotter. And even that could not cause singeing of their garments, and smell of fire was not on them, which is amazing. But that's because they wouldn't bow to Babylon. And from chapter 4, verse 1 through Revelation, you got people, the saints and the prophets and the apostles are people who are not bowing to Babylon. That's what it is. I think we can agree on that. Any scholar, any reader of the Bible, any person, any lay person, any pastor, any teacher, professor, whatever you want to call yourself, we got to agree that there's no group other than the woman who represents the bearing of the child, which would be the nation of Israel, which means there's something going on in Israel still yet. And if John, being a Jew, he cares about Israel, and the Lord knows he cares about Israel because he's a Jew that he selected to be his disciple, to live to be 90, some years old, or lived into the end of the 1st century. So John, being a Jew, cares about Jews. Why wouldn't he not? Paul, being a Jew, cares about Jews. Why would he not? You, being American, care about Americans. You, being Italian, care about Italians. You, being Greek, care about Greeks. Why would you not? But Jews, it's a different thing. In them contains the law, the testimonies, the covenants, the promises, the oracles of God. What God started, he's going to finish. He's the first and the last. He started with Abraham, he's going to finish with Abraham. Started with Moses as a people group, as a nation. He birthed the nation of Israel. He's going to finish with that. Why can't God do that? Why can't we agree on that? Why do we have to argue about it? Why, if God started something new, isn't he faithful to complete it? Philippians 1:6. He who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it to the end. If God began a good work in Abraham on the land side, on the layout of what Canaan was and what it was promised to be to him, Euphrates down to the depths of the desert there, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. If he promised it to Abraham and he began a good work, why wouldn't he finish that work? All God's character and his promises and his way of moving is put into play, into jeopardy, by you saying God's done with Israel. Well, God is saving individual Jews. But what about the people, the 12 tribes? What about the losing of the land and God being defamed by it? God did that. God allowed Assyria to destroy the northern kingdom. God allowed Babylon to deport Judah and Benjamin. God brought them back with Cyrus, king of the Persians. He did that miraculously and was foretold by Isaiah. It was a miracle on top of miracles. It was amazing. But my point is, God completes what he starts. And so you jump back here to 14, and we go back to the loud voice, and we go back to the completion of the fall of Babylon. He says, this voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. This now is accompanied with song. In the beginning, it's accompanied with just big noise, big waters, big power, big glory, big amazing presence of Jesus. Now, there's songs attached to it, being sung by who? And they sang a new song before the throne, and before the throne which is in heaven, not here on earth, before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. They're no longer there. They're up in heavenly places. They've heard the song of Zion. They know how to sing it. It's a supernatural sound. No one understands it. You don't understand it. It's a different sound. It's a different language. Nobody gets it because they haven't been to heaven. They haven't been ordained. They haven't been selected. They haven't had the name of the Father and the name of the Son placed on their foreheads. Ordained for such a time as this, for this particular task, and it's a powerful move, and it's accompanied by worship, it's accompanied by song. God loves music, God loves song.